CBT News, celebrating 10 years of delivering the news and content automotive professionals count on. CBT News, 10 years strong. Subscribe today. Welcome to CBT News with Bridget Fitzpatrick.
Good morning, everyone. Welcome back to CBT News. I'm Bridget Fitzpatrick. Thank you so much for joining us. Today on Inside Automotive, we're joined by JM&A leaders Jonathan Jordan, Director of Sales Strategy, and Kevin Hall, Director of Sales and Talent Services. But first, here are today's top stories. Starting our coverage, dealers are saying the car market will worsen before the end of the year, according to a Cox Automotive report. The study measured both franchised and independent auto retail sentiments for the fourth quarter of 2022 and surveyed over 1,000 business owners between late October and early November. Dealers reported the lowest expectations for market performance on record, even lower than during the 2020 pandemic. Chief concerns among dealers were high interest rates and poor economic performance. High interest rates have raised monthly car payments, while layoffs and recession concerns have made consumers cautious about expensive purchases. However, dealers did note that inventory was finally starting to catch up to demand thanks to a slowly recuperating supply chain, a trend which could drive prices down in 2023. Up next, new information obtained by CNBC suggests that Elon Musk recruited executives from his other companies, including Tesla, to assist with Twitter. According to the report, the CEO obtained the help of company leaders from SpaceX, Tesla, and Boring Company in the months following his purchase of the social media site. In a court battle over his Tesla compensation, Musk described the work as voluntary. However, this is unlikely to dissuade frustrated investors who have argued that Musk is too divided between projects to be an effective manager of a public company. Since taking over Twitter, Tesla's stock has dropped 25%. Japanese automaker Hyundai and Korean battery manufacturers SK On have officiated plans to construct a new joint venture battery plant in the state of Georgia. Since the Biden administration's passing of the Inflation Reduction Act, the U.S. has witnessed a slew of new factories as foreign companies seek to take advantage of the bill's generous tax credits for domestic producers. Although overseas car makers have publicly denounced the legislation for being unfavorable to international trade, brands such as Honda, VinFast, and BMW have nonetheless revealed plans to construct new facilities across the country. The new factory will supply SK On developed batteries for Hyundai EVs and will begin construction in 2025. Finally, in the latest development of a near-decade-long investigation, the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration asked car makers for additional information concerning faulty airbags. In its request, the agency asked automakers to provide details on airbag testing methods and production quantities in relation to ARC Automotive, who allegedly sold faulty airbag inflators used by 12 separate companies. The devices were found to occasionally explode in car crashes, resulting in at least 2 deaths. Airbags have been an ongoing problem for the auto industry, with previous investigations resulting in the recall of 67 million vehicles. Don't go anywhere. Up next, our JMA leaders, Jonathan Jordan, Director of Sales Strategy, and Kevin Hall, Director of Sales and Talent Services. We'll be right back.
Delivering the news dealers count on for 10 years. Subscribe today and join thousands of other automotive professionals. CBT News, 10 years strong.
All right, it's critical to have a modernized F&I process that evolves along with the industry and consumer expectations. On today's show, we're joined in the studio by Jonathan Jordan, Director of Sales Strategy for JM&A Group, and Kevin Hall, Director of Sales and Talent Services for JM&A Group, to find out how dealers can continue to compete with their offerings. Check it out.
Now more than ever, consumers are in control of the buying process, as we've seen through COVID. We know for sure everyone picks up their phone, and that's kind of where it starts, right? I mean, that's what it's all about. So how is JM&A adopting to this trend?
Sure. I mean, I think, Jim, the biggest thing is, and the word we use a lot is flexibility. Mm-hmm. And that is looking at our traditional processes that we've used for a long time. They've been extremely successful. and saying, how can we be flexible with those processes so we can interact with the consumer any way that they want to, whether that be at home, whether that be in the store, whether that be on the phone, video, any channel that they want to interact with, through the process is where we want them, to be able to do it. And what we've seen is, and to be honest, it was a little uncomfortable at first, right? Like, we got this in-store process. We want to be face-to-face with the customer. But what we've seen is when we do it the way the customer wants to do it, it's very successful.
Yeah.
And sometimes even more successful than forcing the customer to do it kind of our way.
Right. Which is what the customer wants to feel, as though they are in control. Whether they come in the dealership, they do most of it online, they do some of it online, whatever the case might be, they want to feel like they're in the driver's seat on that, right?
Right.
Yeah, there's no question. So the past few years have been kind of unique in the sense that, if a dealer had a car, it's going to get sold right off the lot. I mean, that's the way it was. People would go into an automobile dealership and either buy the car that's there if they want it, or sit down and order the vehicle. But those times are changing a little bit more, right? And now they've got more choices than they've had in the past. What is the situation out there right now with consumers and with dealers to be able to identify those customers that need those cars, and how is the process changing for those customers?
The last few years have been, I'd say, the most interesting we've seen in a very long time in our industry, because, to go back to your previous question, Jim, we started out, customers over the last couple decades have changed, and they become more and more in control of the process.
Right.
And then we look at the last 2 years, inventory shrank down to almost nothing. And dealers had a little bit more control than they'd had over the past several years. Well, now we're starting to see inventories come back, and that hard trend of the consumer changing, of the consumer wanting a different experience is back.
Right.
And the dealers that are going to be able to maintain the profitability and the performance that they've had over the last several years are the dealers that are going to be focused on the consumer experience and doing it the way. There's no question that there's a direct correlation between inventory levels and the front-end grosses, the F&I PVRs that we've seen. And if we want to maintain those levels moving forward, we're going to have to get better at the consumer experience.
Yeah.
And I think what we've seen as well to that point is NADA just came out with their annual workforce study, and turnover levels are at the lowest, 34%, than they've ever been since they've started that survey. Right. And then if you look at dealer payroll over that same time period, it's up almost $1 million.
Wow.
So there's maybe a direct correlation, right, in terms of what we've seen and that. And so one of the big things that Jonathan and I and the team at JM&A are really focused on is not only how do we meet the consumer expectations, but how do we also help our dealers meet their employee expectations? Right. Because all that's evolving, and it's really the same expectation.
All right, be sure to watch this interview in its entirety right here at cbtnews.com. That wraps up our show for today, but we invite you to join us back here again tomorrow morning for all the latest news and trends impacting the retail automotive industry. And be sure to follow us on LinkedIn, TikTok, Facebook, and Twitter. Bridget Fitzpatrick, thanks for watching, and have a great day.
CBT News, your #1 resource for auto industry news and content. Join the #1 most watched newscast in the automotive industry. CBT News, 10 years strong. Subscribe today.